Well, thanks for joining on a gray and gloomy LA type Saturday. We're going to look at pictures from the 64 fair. As the title for the day says, newly restored. I was going back and we've done an awful lot of home videos and the home movies in the last couple of months. So when was the last time we did a whole bunch of pictures from the fair? And it was, oh my goodness, January. So I called up the computer and said, okay, how many pictures have I restored since January? And just of the 64 fair. So do we have any guess?
600 to 700.
That's a little high. 328. So we're not going to get through all 328 of them today. That's just the ones I restored. That doesn't count the ones I've scanned that are still waiting in that pile. And some of these ones I restored, I scanned maybe 10 years ago. So we'll get to it. The way that they're in a folder, it's like, image 001, Belgian Village, 001, something else. Because I just said, take all the pictures that have been, updated in 2023 and make a copy of them. So we're going to jump from the Belgian Village to say, fireworks to the Ford Pavilion, back to the Belgian Village, back to fireworks, over to GM, back to the Belgian Village. So as I said, I hope everybody's got their comfortable shoes on, or at least a comfortable chair. And we're gonna go hopping around. So let's see, share a screen.
Are any of them your photos?
Pardon me, sorry.
Oh, all the really bad ones are mine.
Yeah, I like to see a then now comparison.
They kind of pop all over the place, and we'll get here going with again, sometimes you can tell the time, like this one's later in the fair because the Belgian Village is actually open for a change. There's also going to be some construction shots in there, so we go up, back in time, forth in time, all over the place. Talk about a sea of mud, huh? It's amazing when you look at this. Carol and I have both worked on projects like Epcot, and that we'd be down there with a sea of mud in every direction and thinking, oh, this is going to be done in a year. No way. And then somehow a year later, it's open. So with this particular one, less than 6 months after the shot, people are happily walking through the grounds. And we hop around. We're inside of Denmark now. Nice shot of the bar action there. You can really tell how times have changed because there's not one, but let's see, 1, 2, 3, at least 4 ashtrays there in the bar. It looks like every bar stool got its own ashtray. This was a interesting bunch of shots. It looked like the street hoods of the 60s. The fair had preview days, so you just don't build it and then open it without testing it. At Disney, we'd have like basically a soft opening. What they did at the fair was they invited people to bring their families in that had worked on building it, and this was a way to like test the rides, make sure that the ride loading mechanism worked. But it was also a way the snack bars could get their people trained, the restaurants could get their people trained, the gift shops could get their people trained with crowds of say maybe 1,000 on a particular day before opening day hit, and you'd have crowds of much higher numbers. So we'll see this kid again. He's just looking too cool with his giant rolled up cups on his pants there.
This man looks so much like your father, Bill.
It does look like my father. It also reminds me of Nick Cage. So, but yeah, I could see the resemblance to my dad in it. As I said, we'll hop over, we'll go daytime, nighttime, back over, left and right. Inside the Ford Pavilion, when Walt Disney had gone to the 62 Seattle World Fair, he had noticed that there was nothing to entertain the lines before people got into the pavilion. They long line out in the sun, which was luckily not too hot up in Seattle. But he knew New York was going to be different, so he convinced the folks at Ford that they needed to come up with some sort of pre-show area to keep people entertained, because he didn't want them in a bad mood from being out in the sun, finally getting there for the show, but not in a good mood. So by giving them maybe 15, 20 minutes worth of stuff to do inside of air conditioning, hopefully all the frustrations of being out in the sun would have gone away. So what they did was they come up with this international village with little dioramas that were all done from around the world where Ford had sold cars. So one of the things they did, this was kind of throwing a bone to the Ford foreign subsidiaries because Ford had pulled back their advertising budget around the world substantially for a number of years to be able to fund the World's Fair exhibit. So this was theoretically a way that the people from England could come and they could see, you know, an English Ford sitting there. These are all done by WED, the Imagineering part of Disney. They came up with them, designed them, built after the fair. They all went into crates, got shipped back to Ford, and they've never been seen since. So somewhere, maybe somewhere in a crate or some of these little dioramas. What was really interesting is on some of these, they actually had things that moved. So you'll see a woman out there throwing crumbs to pigeons, and the pigeons' heads will be bobbing. When the Beatles hit to be a real big success, they put a picture of the Beatles standing in the street and little pictures of fans standing around taking their pictures. So a lot of details, and this was something, again, one of Walt's ideas. And if we remember, you know, Walt's history, he loved miniatures. He loved building little towns and little shops and everything. So this was one that he was able to convince Ford to pay for.
Yeah, I wonder if it was built by the same people that did Storybook Land, or a lot of the model builders that did Storybook Land.
That could well be, Brock. Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
really detailed. I mean, if you zoom in on this thing, you know, you can look again, there's all the little vegetables and the signs and everything, people reading the newspapers, a woman selling flowers at her cart. You know, they really went to a lot of details, you know, even things like the traditional English post box out here. So, and a kind of a beautiful day out there at the fair. General Electric beckoning the crowds, Tower of Light off to the side there. One of the flagpoles that people still say not the eagles on it, but they're a Art Deco eagle left from the 1939 fair. And an earlier view of GE going up, Shea Stadium in the background. Over here is the very, very beginning of the IBM Pavilion. This is where the bleachers are going to rise up into the egg that's going to be there one day. General Motors, giant facade. This was a great shot I enjoyed because it caught how they played with lights on it. GE, we knew, had the big swirling electric lights, and you could see the pattern go. Well, General Motors also had electric lights that would change, and they could do in gradients where the bottom would be blue and then it would fade up and become green at the top. Or as you can see in this one, they could move swaths of color back and forth. So you can take two shots of the General Motors Pavilion, time them that they were fairly close in time by the shot of somebody walking across in the crowd. And you can see just in the period of, say, getting from one of these luminaires to the next one, how the whole facade took on a very different look. Going into the fair, looks like from the clock, it's about 10:30 in the morning, so a good-sized crowd coming in. There's Wayne's favorite RCA down below. They must have paid a fortune to be right at the entrance to the main gate coming into the fair. But here's one of the pylon towers, just supposedly to let you find your way around the fairgrounds. This was a different entrance. This was one of the two entrances coming in from the Meadow Lake area. This was over, I guess this would be the northernmost one, over by Hawaii. And a lot of these pavilions didn't get themselves open, fully open in day one. So they were still being worked on. So the fair is open. You can see the aerial tower rides in operation. But here's one of the huts for the Hawaiian Pavilion. And it's really interesting. They have thatched roofs on them. But if you look, the whole interior is using aluminum beams to support it. So it was a way that they could get something to stand up to the hurricane winds that the fair had to be built to last against in New York. And also, you didn't have to come and worry about bringing logs from Hawaii or anything. They brought in people to do all the thatched roofs. But kind of interesting knowing that these buildings, which look real rustic, all have aluminum interiors. New York State Pavilion, one of the helicopters going by. There's IBM. The egg has been finished. That set of orange beams we saw now extend up here into the inside of it. Kodak being built over in the background. The Unisphere has a couple of the contents on it, but you can see this side is totally empty. And they were getting the very first pictures up here on the uh, uh, giant diorama that they did around there. And this again shows how these were not giant slides, which a lot of people thought, but strips of paper. So there's two of them up here now. And there's lots and lots and lots of little holes that don't show in this picture that basically sucked air in all the time. And that suction was what held these giant prints up against the side of the building. Up to the mezzanine level of the New York State Pavilion, Governor Rockefeller, as all politicians will do, will try to make themselves seen everywhere they can be seen and take credit for everything they can take credit for. So up on the mezzanine, they had all sorts of displays on how the New York State tax system worked, on things that you could see around like Tuxedo, Sterling Gardens in Tuxedo, New York, places you could go to. And don't know what they're touting here, but there's a good old Rockefeller himself, and a fan of Nelson's. Over to Small World, we can see that they're open today from 9 to 11. A lot of times the fair stayed open later because of the nightclubs and things like that. So the fair basically was closing at 10 o'clock at night. As the crowds were staying longer, they extended the operating hours to some of the things like Small World to 11. But a lot of the other pavilions that didn't have the same huge crowds would happily close at 10. Nice nighttime view somebody caught. Imagine this was probably done with a tripod, but it was also done with fairly fast film because the people are not blurred as they're walking by. But a nice shot of the fountains of the fair, Fountain of the Planets rather, before the fireworks go. The Port Authority building going up. Shea Stadium. All of the pylons being put in for one of the pavilions. And again, people are saying, for example, in the New York State Pavilion, there's been a big controversy. The pilings under the concrete pillars, are they rotting wood or are they steel? Is the combination of the two? And a lot of times you try to find out what was there from these photos. In this particular case, these are pilings that were being put in for the Ford Pavilion. And in the background here, you can see one of what was called the Bud structures. They were sunshades for picnic areas were left from the 39 fair, built by the Bud Company, which made a lot of the train cars. And they were showing how they can make other things out of aluminum. Sadly, for whatever reason, they were not in the way of anything, but they were ripped out for the 64 fair and gone. They could have easily been left and it would have been a really nice legacy. And one of the fountains outside the the United States Pavilion. Again, the Belgian Village, one of the things that's interesting is you build something like the fair and they generate all during the day a tremendous amount of garbage. Well, Disney, we all know that for example, at the Magic Kingdom in Florida, you have the vacuum system that you dump garbage into at the Magic Kingdom and whisk it away. Here, they just had to put dumpsters around, and there were actually scenes of garbage trucks driving through the middle of the fair during the middle of the day, hauling it all away. And here's our young friend again, looking very cool. General Motors going up. Over here is the very first part of the New York State Towers going up. So some of the roads are being paved and things are coming along. They will put in temporary markers here. So you can see that we're at the Avenue of the African Nations here. Otherwise, if you tell people take a left at the Avenue of African Nations, how would you know until the signs are up? More of IBM. And it's kind of self-explanatory, just a crowd shot of India. Kodak now with the pictures, I think they were comprised of 8 strips, if I remember right, going across. Giant lights down here in this bin down below that would bounce off special reflective paper. And again, you can see that the background here, they don't have one up yet. They had put out bids for all sorts of photographers to solicit their their photography to be up there. And as you can imagine, these were done by professional photographers. Down below in this area under the moon roof, they had an area for amateur photographers, and they periodically changed that out, and people could get a certificate that your photo won, third prize at the Kodak exhibit at the World's Fair. Over at the Long Island Railroad, the route of the dashing commuter. How many people here would know what the name of this guy is? If you're from Long Island, you got to know. No one. That's Dashing Dan. And then to show how things were changing, women were now coming into the workplace, and they had a equally harried woman commuter running, and she was Dashing Dottie. So now, because for years they had always called themselves the Route of Dashing Dan. Now, because the women were coming in the workspace, they changed to the Route of the Dashing Commuter. Looking down from the Skyway, the main mall. We go into China here. Again, this was the Taiwan was not the mainland China. A nice shot of the New York State Pavilion at night. VIP level, all those big shots that we never get to see. Over to Oregon, climbing up or down the tower, and down here they had axe throwing. So big popular thing on my website. I have correspondence from the people that ran the concession, talking about how between 64 and 65 there was a big war about who was coming back and who got fired, and just all sorts of interesting behind the scenes stuff going on. And the Santa Maria, the what they called the spaceship of the time. It's over there. Mannequins up on the mast, supposedly doing work. In the background, you can see an absolutely empty amphitheater, which was placing this in probably 64 after the Wonderama show shut down, or it could be in 65 just before the seating for that particular moment of the water skiing show. A giant parking lot today. This was kind of interesting. The flamenco dancers at the Spanish Pavilion. They again brought people in from the various pavilions to do their local arts, singing, dancing, that sort of thing. And she is obviously enjoying being the belle of the ball right there. And we hop over to the Tower of Light Pavilion. One of the little Cushman scooters outside of Bell System. This looks really nice and sleek and modern and everything. It's just basically a giant set of cast iron pipes that are bolted together at several sections to hold the microwave dish up here at the top, and then a nice skin put on the outside of it for eye candy. Down below, you could watch the technicians at work, and they basically beamed everything out of here across to Manhattan, and got all the TV programs and all the telephone connections in and out of the fair through there. And just a shot walking around the fairgrounds. Building General Motors. Look at the size of the basement that this thing was there. Not ever open to the public. It's just where they kept all their stuff in offices and other odds and ends, but a massive undertaking. And one of the Pinkerton guards. Getting real close to opening day here. We're looking from the United States Pavilion over towards the Berlin Pavilion here. And this was about a week after the fair opened. So there was still all sorts of stuff all over the place, putting in the last concrete plants, everything. It was very definitely a race to the finish, and some of them did not win. But a better look at Berlin. I don't know the name of this sculpture over here. I've got to try to find that name out and find out where it went. But this was right at the time of the Berlin airlift and all sorts of international drama with the Soviets blockading and everything. So Berlin had a thing inside that, hey, we may be cut off from the rest of the world, with only reachable by airplane, but we have a vibrant business economy and everything, and don't forget us. So basically a big concrete wall outside and this sort of strict plastic roof out here, which if you look at it and you think about Expo 67 in Canada, very, very similar to the German pavilion that they did in Expo 67. And this was one of the very first examples of a plastic roof that was in public use. Going down the Court of States towards the United States Pavilion. Each state had their flag. They had a little plaque on it telling you what state it was. More construction. Mentioned on prior talks, these little tunnels here, this is where the Flushing River could come in or go out of the pool here. When you wanted to do the fireworks, you would close off the water on one side. The water would flow with the tide on the other side, and a walkway, which you can't quite see here, shows up miraculously, and you walk out and load the fireworks from it. And speaking of fireworks, Florida, as we know, came and expanded for 1965. They put this water ski show in, and I always wonder if they heated that water or not, because it must have been very, very chilly, if not, when the fair first opened. Nice shot showing the swirling roof pattern on the General Electric. Again, it looks sort of static now, but when you see movies of it, it can go fast, it can go slow, it can go in the opposite direction, it can change to a, here is mostly a reddish pattern, it can change to greens, blues, whites. It was very, very state of the art with a computer system basically the size of a large SUV, just for the lights. The Bounty is there for just 1964 over in the marina. And we can see how Hollywood movies are made, or we could go to the Bistro A Go-Go, because remember, disco is coming along and starting to be a big thing, for discotheques, and Candy Johnson and others dancers dancing on tabletops and that. Close up of IBM under construction. Like I said, these are all, we're into the 003s now, so again, they're just hopping all over the place. Entrance to Korea, again, not South Korea, because to us, North Korea didn't exist, so it was just Korea. Again, another display that you see in China as you were waiting to get to the Chinese restaurant. Ceremony going underway at the Philippines Pavilion. They're raising the flag, and they had looks like a beauty contest going away. I've got a number of pictures of these young ladies with these sashes out posing, people taking their pictures. Back to the flamenco dancers. What's kind of interesting is if you zoom in on this, I'll see if there's one of these. Yeah, look at the picture of the lady on the left. She's not enjoying it. She's not the center of attention. And some of the shots she has absolutely, looks could kill. This lady in pink here would be dead, buried, and gone. I mean, the looks of on her and some of them are really just kind of fascinating. And the others are just enjoying the performance. My favorite time at the fair, night, it was cooler, quieter, calmer, and the humidity tended not to be as obtrusive. Again, more pylons going in, they're not labeled. It'd be nice to know where they are. More of the General Motors Pavilion being built. And people is doing something you can do today. Go out and sit by the Unisphere and relax. Take a load off your feet, but the fountains aren't going to be this high. People were commenting that for some reason they didn't have the jets on this year for the US Open, and they were speculating that there was a plumbing problem. So I don't know if that's the case or not. But even when they run the fountain, they do not run it all full born, because if they did, people would jump in and go swimming here. So the water doesn't get out past about this area now. Austria relocated upstate New York for a ski lodge and unfortunately burned down about 10 years ago. There's more general crowd scenes, more of the water skiers there. This outside the New York City Pavilion, these fountains are still there. They've not been turned on since about 1966. Again, probably a liability issue. It'd be interesting to know if you tried the pumps, if they'd work or not. But all the mechanism, the jets are still sitting out there if you go to the fair today. And just one of the fountains lit up at night. Freedom of the Human Spirit, still on the fairgrounds. You can still go out and see it. Just before opening, Rheingold over here. Again, you can see how the pattern has changed. Before it was narrower stripes, now it's bigger ones. So outside the fairgrounds, looking in at GM. More of the Bounty. And she looks real happy to be learning about what computers can do for you. Here's the probability machine that was recreated for the movie Tomorrowland. You could, the idea if you drop 1,000,000 balls, they're all going to come into the same pattern no matter how many times you do it. That, you know, life has certain things that happen according to, you know, the laws of probability. Real early shot of Kodak. And the Lunar Fountain. The Long Island Railroad exhibit. A lot of this stuff is taken down. It was brought out to a park that I think was Grumman operated for their employees' families. Is now out in a small railroad museum out in Riverhead, Long Island. So if you get the chance to go to New York, you can go ride the train again. Things still being built, plastic sheeting up here so that the workmen could work up there without the winter winds ripping them apart. Yeah, let's see what the lady looks like in this particular one, if she's any happier. This one, oh, I found the camera. I'm the star. Skyway, the biggest Skyway system I've ever seen with, you know, 4 sets of cables on it. And, you know, some days it was very packed. On lighter days, they'd only use one side. But a great way to see the fairground. I didn't have a lot of money, but I would try to save up money when I went to the fair to try to take a trip across it. It was also, besides sitting by the Unisphere and resting your feet, this was a very nice leisurely way to spend a trip, go across and, you know, not have to walk as far. Side view of the US Pavilion. Forming some of the rebar for one of the pavilions. Again, I believe this is General Motors. And we're just hopscotching our way around. Yeah, sort of what a difference, daytime to nighttime, right? This was one I posted online about a week or 2 weeks ago, and people were looking at it, trying to figure what something was. So let me zoom in here. And they were trying to figure out what these 2 people were standing here. This was one of the things you put a dime or a quarter, whatever they charged, in the middle plate there would vibrate to rest your tired feet. So these show up in a number of spots around the fairgrounds. And somebody said, yeah, today they have massaging chairs and shopping centers you can go and sit and rest. But that's what these were. They weren't guessing your weight. They were vibrating and theoretically bringing more blood back into your tired tootsies and letting you enjoy the fair. Down below, you can see all sorts of souvenir items sold. Over here, they're getting food at the Brass Rail Snack Bar. Up here is, it looks like people sitting up here, and that's what it is, basically seats with no table that you could come up and sit there like you were at a ballpark or something, bring your food up and just eat it off your lap. And then back here, the restrooms, which you don't see all over the fair. I mean, with this many people, there had to be a lot of bathrooms. All these brass rails had free restrooms in them. I'd like to think that they were practicing at this point when these pictures are taken because they don't have a big audience. Mr. Lincoln, again, shots of him are very, very hard to find because the film of the time wasn't real good for indoor photography. Plus, they told you no flash photography, so you don't end up with a lot of crystal clear pictures of Abe. And the International Village, you could see that you could go and buy African goods. There are all sorts of odds and ends. And of course, what do you get from the Netherlands but soft serve ice cream? So I don't think any times I've ever been to the Netherlands, I've actually seen it for sale there. But if we zoom in on the sign and look, we can see, for me, the pictures of all the participants are over here, but there's a sign about Dutch ice cream over there. And here you can get the house of authentic Chinese food. This one I really got a kick out of, a real springtime picture. We're on the grounds of the Billy Graham Pavilion with the Protestant Orthodox Pavilion off to the side. But just looking how all these trees are flowering, I just thought it was looks like a very nice spring day. Still early because the ladies are still wearing their heavier coats and that, but just a real burst of color out there. And there are, I think, about 8 shots of this woman doing her dance. These are large size negatives. These were about 4 inches by 4 inches. So a tremendous amount of detail. Again, if you zoom in on these things, you can see the zipper real clearly and all the rest of it. Yeah, she's a little happier. This one's still staring at the camera. The rocket thrower. More General Motors. The space park. Some of the rockets are still out there today, refurbished. Again, indoor photography didn't make the best for the lighting of the time. Particularly in this one, if you're on the moving platform, very hard to get a good shot of the Pieta because the plastic or the glass between you and the statue, the dim lighting, and the fact you're moving. So you have to catch yourself lucky if you end up with something halfway decent. And you go over to Africa. They had the Tree House restaurant up here. It was a big favorite that Susie the giraffe would stick her head up there and people could feed her. And down below, you had all sorts of other animals. Hopefully, these camels didn't spit on too many people, but that's something they're known for. The brass rail, again, these are all snack bar. Here's the seating area. Over here, these are all gift shops and everything, the snack bar being behind it. A neat shot, DuPont there, giant molecules out here because they were showing you all the things you could do with chemistry. And here's one of our family phone booths, the first public use of speaker phones. And right here, one of the Serpentine phone booths. This time we get the guys jumping at Florida. Nice air-conditioned day at Ford. Lunch break for the construction crew. This was another one I did just recently. We've seen so many pictures of one side of General Motors. This is basically taken over from the highway side of it, and it's just the sheer scope of the size of this thing. It's just kind of amazing. And for us Star Trek fans, we can see how Doug Drexler and others adapted this, and it's the shape of Starfleet Academy, which they put in all the Star Trek movies in San Francisco these days. But Doug made a direct connection between this facade and Starfleet Academy. And lots of cars that would be worth lots and lots of money today, right? In this particular shape. Grand Central Parkway going through the fairgrounds. The Hall of Science. Down below, the golden dandelion statue and a little fountain here. And then all these little kiosks were displays of the various chemicals and other things that Kodak did besides just photography. and also the amateur camera contests that they had at times. Again, this is the same photographer that took the Spanish dance pavilions. We have dancers out here at Mexico, mariachi bands playing. Here's the pole that the Los Voladores acrobats would go up later in the show. Looking out from the New York State observation towers. Scott Paper. Everybody had a tower because you would want to make sure that if you had a one-story building, how do you get attention? You put a three-story tower at it, and that way you might get people to say, "Oh, meet me at Scott, meet me at Parker Penn, meet me at whatever." But you know, get your advertising up there as much as you possibly could. Quiet moment at Shea. Back to the space part. Mentioned on prior talks, this is an actual Mercury capsule, one of the first ones launched. It was the beach abort test in a actual launch of the missile with the astronauts in it. They'd be up here, and if anything went wrong, the missile started to collapse or blow or anything. These rockets up here were designed that they would blast the Mercury capsule off with the astronauts safely on board, take it a couple hundred feet in the air, and then go in an arc down range so that they could land safely. So they weren't sure if this sucker would work or not. So they took this out to, I think it was called Wallops Island at the beach, put one of the capsules out there, lit the rockets off. It went up, it came down, worked exactly the way it should have. And then they didn't have anything else to do with the Mercury capsule. So they gave it back to NASA, who put it in the space park, and it's now on display inside the Hall of Science. But this is the first Mercury capsule actually launched. So kind of a historic thing for space geeks. Swedish pavilion, mailboxes that dotted the fairgrounds. Again, things going up. I believe this was shot looking out from China, out looking over towards the Unisphere. Oh yeah, here's the Chinese flag right here. Just flipping through these as they're all sort of self-explanatory. All the temporary supports to hold up the Bell System Pavilion being built by American Bridge Corporation. Inside the Protestant Orthodox Pavilion, there were all sorts of displays. In this particular one, you'd pick up the handset and you would be told about the Bible or the illustrated manuscript that they're displaying. This is another one of the snack bars again. You can see here they had some tabletops you could stand around, but they also had vending machines. If you didn't want to sit on or wait online, you can run over here, get yourself a candy bar, cigarettes, that sort of thing. And then the restrooms are back here underneath this bleacher area that everybody's sitting on. And we have our porpoise show. This is not building the fair itself. It's building one of the highways in the area. I believe this is one of the support beams for the Long Island Expressway that passes by the fair. This is how they were able to proclaim it the billion-dollar fair. The whole $1 billion didn't go into building pavilions. Part of it was the budget for the road system that would get you to and from the fair. Indonesia, a 64 shot, because as we know, this was closed for 65. Inside the American Express Pavilion, the fair, this model that was there, and lights would come on and show you as the narrator would talk about the United States Pavilion or the Ford Pavilion. So they had a whole canned narration that went with it. This is the model that gave Rob Bianco his inspiration to start building the model he built at the World's Fair, and he's been on our talks and has done showed off some of his other work. You can see how they didn't update it all the time. The travel and transportation pavilion is the early design and does not reflect the moon dome that we later saw on it. So new, I want to go so bad. And okay, how many people have the song playing in the head now? As soon as you see a picture of Small World, right? And see you smiling, Brock. It's automatic, isn't it? The skin going on IBM. No skin yet on the Tower of Light. Not all days of the fair were bright and shiny, and these were actually, just as we know these days with the crowds at Disneyland, you want to go on a good day, go when it's raining, because most people won't. So, you know, I never let the New York weather deter me. If it was raining and I had plans to go that day, I was just as happy to go. And you just got wet, you had fun, then the crowds are always a lot lighter. I do not know what pavilion this is. So if anybody recognizes this style of jewelry, please feel free to let me know. Looking down from New York State. Talked before about how huge this cage was for the Astral Fountain, and you can see it just the size of the people here. I mentioned before, a friend of mine owns one of these stars, and it's probably a good 3 feet, you know, from here to here. They're good size. Quiet moment inside the Belgian village. Love this one, all the luminaires. Again, supposedly these were in some color pattern that you could find your way around. So I don't know what the pattern is. If anybody,
published a key to reading those things?
what's that?
Has anyone ever published a key to reading the luminaires?
We've got the map of where they all were, but nobody's ever figured out that if you went from green to red, where you were going or how you find out. A friend of mine, Kevin Karsh, did he took the World's Fair operation guide and mapped out where each and every light of what every kind of color and everything was. And it's on my website, but we've never been able to have anybody down and tell us that if you are seeing these lights and then you're starting to see these lights, you're going to see these lights, what the hell it means. Whether the colors meant something, the shapes meant something, the size meant something. Someday we'll find some document. This was one I recently restored, and this was kind of interesting. This is the rocket over at the Chrysler Pavilion. And people today, you would never think about it, but Chrysler in the 60s was big into making rockets. And the thing I remember is the water just didn't come out of these things. It shot out of here. It was incredibly loud. It was, and it was really neat because on a hot day, the mist would kind of pop around. But you know, Chrysler probably hasn't made a rocket in 50 years, but this was still a big part of their business then. And around we go. Forms in space. This has been damaged over the years, so some of the fins are missing on it, and it's been relocated around, but it's still in the park. This is interesting. Bison. This was a turbine truck that was done by General Motors, and somebody recently asked me for some pictures of it for a article that they were doing. But very, very space age. I think if we get them all, you can see the controls. For example, I got a really neat shot of this control stalk. It was not just a steering wheel, but all sorts of other controls up here on the thing. But this was an experimental truck. You had Chrysler had the turbine car that you could see being driven around. GM had the turbine truck. We're still not quite into turbine vehicles all over our roads, but I put this online and everybody said, "Oh my goodness, it's like Thunderbirds." If you were a fan of Jerry Anderson's Thunderbird ship, there's like 3 different, look like giant pods that are carried behind it. We're over at the Hollywood USA Pavilion, where you could take pictures of supposed movie sets. So here they're reenacting South Pacific. By now, everybody knows IBM. Just a nice view here. You know, one of the things I was commenting online recently was that the fair did a wonderful job with their flowers, even as they realized they were not going to make money. They were on their way to financial ruin. They really never cut back on it. The grounds were kept in good shape. The final week, you know, the final 2-3 days was garbage everywhere because so many people came, they just couldn't keep up with it. But for all the other problems of the fair, you don't see overflowing trash cans, you don't see garbage all over the place. They had a pretty good sized groundkeeping crew to keep the place clean, and also to keep it nice and green and the flowers and all. So it was something I always admire them for not giving up and just saying it's not going to work. Who cares? They dogged away on it until the end.
The thing that doubly impressed me is they had that in '65, the terrible heat and drought,
Yeah.
and they still kept the grounds up.
Yeah, they really took a toll on it. And they also had problems with people deciding, oh, here's a shortcut, I'll just go through the flowers or whatever. But 65, they had to put signs out about this fountain uses recycled water, and they actually turned a number of the fountains off, like the one that was in front of the Mormon Pavilion and others, because there was people couldn't get drinking water for their houses. The last thing a exhibitor at the fair wanted to be accused was, you know, wasting that water. And we're over at Oregon. They put these floating things up here because they realized everybody was just going over to the other side of the Flushing River here and watching it for free. So they put these up to keep out the prying eyes. But they would do log rolling contests, axe throwing, all sorts of odds and ends. The little miniature train from the Long Island Railroad, as I mentioned, is out in Riverhead, Long Island. I went out and rode it, and again, it's real narrow. It was great when you were, I don't know what the kids are, 8 years old or so. When I went and rode it, it was 65 or something. The seats are real narrow, but my God, it was so fun to ride it again. So if you're on Long Island and you get a chance, you got to go give it a ride. Again, the model having all sorts of things that were not, excuse me, actually built. This is in the model room of the fair headquarters. Let me just grab some water here. The triangular shaped building here was going to be the France Pavilion. They did all sorts of fun things, groundbreaking ceremony and big brochures and everything, but they didn't come up with the money to do it, so this building wasn't built, and we ended up with the Paris Pavilion that was there. Then there's a giant arch here. This was the Arch of the Americas. It was going to be a symbol of international peace, spanning, you know, how Central America spans the world between North and South America. This was going to be the arch. That didn't make it in there. You had some others. The World of Food Pavilion started being built. They couldn't come up enough money. So I get a kick every time I get one of these. I'm just going through it all over the place. Again, here's the Travel and Transportation Pavilion. Some of these, they hadn't even figured out what they were going to look like yet. So there's no giant Ferris wheel, some of that. But I always just get a real kick of going through it and looking at it. Oh, different design for the Kodak Pavilion.
You had similar early stuff show up in the pop-up books and jigsaw puzzles.
Yes, that's right. Shows up on some of the early art, because you got to start making this stuff before opening day, right? There's solar fountain and all the little whirly giggers running around shooting water. Thailand. Up on the New York State Pavilion, here is the box for one of the phones that you would drop a quarter in here, and you would listen to a narration, and the narrator would say, as you look to the left, you'll see in the background that this and that, and they would give you a tour. And then when you walk around, they were scattered around on the observation level. You put a quarter into the next one, and they would tell you what you were seeing in that particular sector. New Jersey down below. And signs of all kinds. What is this one particularly doing here? The Millstone and Seafarers Lounge. That's a spot you could go eat in the New England States Pavilion. So the fair was constantly getting into arguments with people that were putting these signs out because the people out here would, the restaurant would be here and nobody would know it's there. So they would go and put the sign up, and then the fair corporation would threaten to fine them to take it down because they didn't want people tripping or, you know, getting hurt or over them. So there's all sorts of correspondence in the fair, fair corporation thing as far as what they were doing to try to keep the exhibitors in check. And this is the opening day of the Protestant and Orthodox Pavilion. It's very early in the year. I don't know if they had their grand opening on opening day of the fair or day before, day after. Some of these things were sort of staggered around, but you can definitely see that they're dressed for warmth, and the trees are just barely beginning to bud. I've also been restoring a bunch of publicity photos. I bought a huge collection of about 150, I guess about 150 publicity photos of black and white photos from the fair. So here's the African pavilion down below. And he's just saying, hi, hey mom, I'm here at the fair. Lucky kid. The Hall of Free Enterprise and one of the press rails. As time goes by, you can see they're getting dingier and dingier. Kind of interesting architectural shot, one of the entrance pylons. And there's another one. I know if I was at the fair, looking at something like this, I'm amazed more people just didn't try to climb these things. And I've got a picture somewhere of somebody about this high, and that's about as far as they got between common sense or somebody yelling at them to get down. But these days in the worlds of TikTok and everything else, we'd have shots of somebody sitting up here with his selfie stick, filming himself to be on the internet. Here's another shot of the bison. This is the one that everybody said reminded them of Thunderbird 2 delivering its pods out there. So giant truck. I mean, 2 sets of wheels here, 2 more in the back. And then they did drive this thing around the country for a while, showcase it and everything. I do not know where it is these days, if General Motors kept it or not. Back to Hollywood, USA, South Pacific again. There's Hollywood again. The IBM host, I remember the very first time watching him come down all of a sudden from up above on his little platform here and thinking, my God, that's got to be the coolest job in the world. Then you start thinking, I wonder how many times a day the poor guy has to do that. But he got quite the reaction because you're all sitting in the stands. They played music for you down below and everything. And the music dies down, and all of a sudden he drops down out of seemingly out of nowhere. It was very impressive. And more log rolling. One of the preview days again, there were Mercury capsules everywhere because this was the days of the Mercury program. So over in Missouri here, we'll zoom in on the sign a little bit. They were very proud that McDonnell Aerospace, headquartered in Missouri, was making the capsule, and there were all sorts of different things that the different ships they were going, Freedom 7, Liberty Bell 7, etc. Protestant and Orthodox Pavilion, again, opening day ceremonies, and she's all dressed to the nines, right? Over to Sinclair.
Bill, that lady looks like Dame Edna.
Yes, yeah, with the glasses,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. Spain. Looking down at night from the New
I
York
think
State.
that was Dame Edna, right? Not
Yeah.
Agnes.
Yeah,
Dame
yeah,
Edna, yeah.
right.
Passed away recently. Later.
Amazing, you build all this, so 2 years later you tear it all out. Big crowd at the Vatican Pavilion that day. Again, these are going in different orders, so we already saw 009, but this is the sort of thing that's on the back, well, most of, but not all of the publicity photos, so I'm scanning those, and, you know, if you were looking at that folder, you see the that picture, then the thing. So, boy, we think about how many of these things they probably sent out to newspapers, magazines, everything over the years, so that they must have been running their duplicating machine nonstop. The Atomatic Hospital, another publicity photo. This is up in the far corner of the fairgrounds, and it was not open to the public. It was open to the public if you got hurt or sick or anything, but they didn't give tours. But they did give VIP tours, and I have a photo album of one of the nurses that worked there, and they've got pictures of Willy Brandt, who was the mayor of Berlin at the time and later became the chancellor of West Germany, getting the VIP tour. The concept for the hospital, these are all prefabricated wedges that in case of a disaster, you could pick these things up, move them to someplace, plunk them down real fast. And they only built, I think, 3 of them. And they just, you know, it was a great idea. It didn't catch on because they weren't big enough, frankly, you know, for most hospitals. And most of the pictures are prints. This are slides, rather. This one happens to be a print, so you don't get quite as sharp a detail. You can also see it has some surface damage. You know, things get stuck in albums or whatever. And you do what you can, but sometimes you just got to live with what you got. Whole set of photos taken. I don't remember the date. I have it on the file folder, but somebody went into the GM Pavilion on a certain date and just took all sorts of pictures of the exhibits. So here's one of the prototype cars. Woman outside the Coventry Charred Cross. People are saying this was the real Coventry Cross. I believe it was actually a replica. Carol and I have seen the real one over in Coventry, but I do not think they uprooted it and moved it over here for the fair. Now, isn't that a beautiful day? I mean, who could not want to be there in a day like this? I mean, just absolutely gorgeous. More of the bison. Long Island Expressway again. More South Pacific. So they would pretend that they were filming. They had the big cameras here. You know, they would, you know, cut action, you know, restage it, take it again. And all the crowds would get excited that that's how Hollywood worked. Now, of course, if this was really Hollywood, you would have lights all over the place. And you'd have about 200 union guys sitting around doing nothing. So it's only approximation. This is kind of interesting ones. The little things you pick up. Let me move it up here. You know, again, people wouldn't dress this way for the fair, would they? You know, in today's thing, you know, he's got his suit, his bow tie, he's all set. And everybody around is pretty well dressed up. Look around here, I don't see any signs of jeans or t-shirts or anything. So between 64 and now, things have very definitely changed. Hey, Mom, on top of the world, or more accurately, on top of a pole at the Oregon Pavilion. This again, this is outside the Missouri Pavilion, but here's the escape tower rockets that I mentioned that they tried for real in the other capsule we saw the first time. A Mayan calendar outside of Mexico. And down here, the Brass Rail Corporation not only had the bubble top snack bars, but they operated other restaurants, and this one had a large seating area and offered a higher class of food. You still brought your went in here, brought your food out on a tray, I believe, and sat out and ate, but they had more than just hamburgers and hot dogs. And we're aboard one of the glider rides, taking a ride through the fairgrounds. And the song is back in your head. Travel and Transportation Dome going up. And some of these, you know, they're better at night than others. Here you can see how part of the globe is lit up and part of it's not, because the lights, they simulated the passage of time around the Unisphere. And this is inside the United States Pavilion. It's a science display. We have some poor little fish in a tank here going on about how I think this particular one talked about how reefs build up around undersea oil platforms, and then measurements that they were taken with buoys that they drop into the ocean. Over at the Denmark Pavilion, you could park your kids and they charged by the hour to watch them for you. And one of the things you could do, actually, this is Wisconsin. They did have a slide at Denmark. This was Wisconsin. They did charge you to go up on this one in a silo, and you got a piece of burlap, and you came sliding down. And this slide shaped like a silo was purchased after the fair and moved back. So somebody in Wisconsin had it again. Tower of Light lit up at night. And again, this is, if these were on order, you would have seen this right after the other, one of the Atomic Hospital. And that's Photoshop taking that lady, the same photo we saw before, but I decided the lady was annoying, so I took her out. I sent her to the cornfields. Publicity photo taken as the fair is finishing up. And again, you didn't just bring everybody in and have them do your dance act the first night in front of crowds. You brought them all in, figured it out, you know, it's the staging and all the rest of it. So this wasn't quite open. Mentioned last week about how they found out the dirt they'd used for these people to dance in turned out to be the wrong material and was hurting their feet. So they had to go and make an emergency airlift of real African dirt to bring in. Another print, Alaska, the Eskimo Pie booth down below here. The totem poles here, after the fair ended, they are in a totem pole museum up in Alaska today. And when Carol and I were up there, you can still go and see these along with many, many other totem poles, but they do survive up there. This is something I'm trying to grow in the backyard, not having any luck with it yet, is the money tree at American Express. And after the fair ended, they took all the money, the $1 million that was up there, and sold off the plaques. I know Mitch Silverstein has at least one of them encased in lucite. Astral Fountain. I don't know what kind of car that is, but I'm sure somebody will.
Rambler looks like.
What's that?
Looked like a Rambler.
Could
Might
well be. You tell me anything, I don't know. Cars, I don't know. Inside
It's
the
either I think it might be either a Mercury or a, because that looks kind of like the Mercury front end, and the back end is a little bit like the Ford
Mhm.
57 Ford was.
Yeah.
I was gonna guess Ford Fairlane maybe.
Yeah, it could be. It might be. the
That's
Ford
my guess
itself.
too. Ford
Yeah, probably
Fairlane.
not a Rambler.
Yeah,
Not a
I knew it
Ford-
was. It
Ford
was.
back end.
It was a Ford product. I knew that.
You guys are good, and you know, and things have changed. And anybody buy a good set of white walls lately?
Actually, they have a thing you can buy, and you can make your tire a white wall. It goes on the tire for people who want to, you know, are doing that crazy stuff with their cars and lowering them and all sorts of stuff, and they want to have these big white wide walls. Well, they don't make the tire, but you can buy this thing that you can attach to it, and it stays on the tire.
Oh,
So if you want to have them, you can.
Don's got COVID. Everybody sit back. Yeah, it's amazing. You know, I used to get a catalog. I think it was something Whitney or something. A car catalog with all the stuff you could buy to put on your car, and it was just astonishing. You know what people would buy or do to their cars. For me, a car was a spot to get from point A to B. But you know, I guess if you want to, I can't see that I'm going to buy a white wall kit. But thanks for letting me know they're out there. And this is inside the Coca-Cola Pavilion. Again, sorry, Pepsi had the giant, you know, thing we all get to know, and Coke had turned down the Small World Pavilion so they could do this. And you'd be here and you'd have odorizers with the scent of pine trees. So you were up in a Swiss chalet and, you know, you were able to get your Coke around the world. So you could go to a hot, humid jungle. You could smell the fish in a Hong Kong fish market. And these are all the places you sell Coca-Cola. Kind of a lame idea to me, but that's what they did. This little runabout was supposed to be so economical and everything that it needed air brakes to slow it down, that you were going to be zipping along with your high-powered car, and when you come to a stop, you hit the button, and these would pop out and help slow you down and decelerate. I don't think to this day any cars have air brakes on them. Again, General Motors, you can see again how the lighting changes. In this particular case, it's all pretty much one color going across. This is another one I just recently did. It's a exhibit of General Motors products that were outside the main pavilion. So they had campers and that sort of thing. And a lot of these, if you look at them, they don't seem to have changed an awful lot. You know, the camper styles, you know, unfortunately today, this was the sort of thing to be parked all over the San Fernando Valley with the homeless living in them. But they had trucks and buses and all sorts of things besides passenger cars that were out there. The King and I from Hollywood. This again, more of the fountains going down the center there. And this guy's a real show off. Not only does he climb up the friggin' pole, but he stands on his head on it. So some people have skills I can only marvel at, and you wonder, how did his first couple of tries doing this work? Then you realize, okay, he's smart, he's not totally dumb, he's got a safety harness on when he's doing it. So if God forbid his balance was off, he'd only go, you know, fall down about here. But I imagine it would be a hell of a jerk when you rolled off anyway.
Say, Bill,
Yeah.
yeah, at Hollywood, were those different movie dioramas there simultaneously, or did they change them out?
No, they were there simultaneously. You walked around and you would go from one part of the so-called back lot to another. So they had a shootout for a Gunsmoke. They had the King and I. They had a Cleopatra one. I think there were about 5 or 6 of them. Then when you went inside the pavilion, they had interior sets. The most impressive I remember was the Oval Office from 7 Days in May was in there, and you could go in and see that. So, but the idea was that you would spend about an hour or so at the Hollywood Pavilion and walk around, and you know the tour guy would say, "Okay, let's all run over here," and that way, you know, by having 6 things going on simultaneously, you could have 6 times the number of people going through it for a you know, increased throughput. Fountain at New York City at night, near the final days of building Shea. The close-up, if we zoom in on any of this, the amount of details they did on pavilions, like all this is all gold leaf. I mentioned before, they actually ran out of all the available gold leaf in New York's state area and had to go and buy it from around the country and bring it in. To the Moon and Beyond, the Cinerama movie up there. Underneath the United States Pavilion, they would give periodic performances and that. And if we zoom in on this one, we can see it's the United States Army Band doing a concert here. So what's interesting is you can start to try to date some of these pictures by doing a search on newspapers.com for United States Army Band concert, United States Pavilion, and a lot of times you are actually able to you know, start pinpointing when some of these things were done. Mentioned a lot of the pylons that went in were wood, and over time they'll have rotted away. They're probably treated wood, but still, even there, they with the water table being what it is in Flushing Meadows, they wouldn't provide much support today. Again, inside the United States Pavilion, examples of sonobuoys and things that can drop into the ocean, and they'll measure the salinity of the ocean, the water temperature of the ocean, that sort of thing. And they use it in weather forecasting to start trying to predict as hurricanes or starting to form based on the water temperature out there. Just a nice shot of our favorite Ferris wheel. And another one of there's some newspaper code for what they call these things that go in the back of pictures. I don't remember what they are right now, but one of those. So we're getting a whole hodgepodge of stuff today. The zoo over at Chrysler, all made out of car parts. Again, if you have it in movies, it's kind of interesting because some of these things like the jaws in this creature move up and down, other things turn themselves around. You kind of lose it in the static shots. And you had we saw before the Court of States, and here we have the Court of Nations. So these were not just all the countries, I think, participating at the fair. I think they threw some others in here. Actually, I know they did because and some of you see the Canadian flag, and there was no Canada pavilion, but they put a little sign out to let you know what you were looking at up above. Little lit up area here is the booth where you came out and they gave you the little light up thing that said New York or New Jersey or whatever on it. Outside General Motors again, they had an exhibit here. This is a 1915 milk truck. And down below it tells you how they hold, I think it says 500 gallons. You can see all the milk cartons here. And in a few moments, we're going to see a nice brand new modern 1965 milk truck and how things change. But just what a beautiful piece of machinery here. And mentioning tires, Brock, you can imagine trying to buy tires for some of these things. The like my airplane uses a certain set of tires that are not made in the United States anymore, but they still make them down in South America. So a lot of these people I know that are restoring cars and that get their tires made outside the United States and bring them back because they're still keeping some of these things on the road in some of these countries. And down below here is the Underground World Home. You can see their air vents and everything for it. He's done showing off and he's coming back down. He's going to come riding down on his pulley here. Nope, nobody's going to go get a submarine sandwich. If you're from New York, Subway takes a different mean. That's to go to the number 7 line to take you back to into Manhattan.
Just for a second, back to that picture of the guy sliding down the pole. I didn't look closely at where he was attached before, but I wonder if that's not the attachment you saw for safety, so that maybe that's how he launched himself off, was to just roll off his head and slide down the wire. I couldn't tell where that was attached, but seeing that, it's like that would make sense, that he would set it up that way, and that was his dismount, shall we say.
A hell of a way to get attention. Oh my God, he's falling. Oh no, he's not.
Yeah.
And we're looking out again across from China, going out over towards the Unisphere, New York City in the back, and the travel and transportation. This one, I just kept this, somebody was focusing, and I think they were probably trying to get this, but they ended up getting that, so. More of the dancers. The zookeeper went to a city in New Jersey, and he stayed in a public park for about 40 years until the salt air finally got him, and he's gone. But he would turn his head, and his arms could come up and raise around. So he was a very large articulated robot. You wonder what treasures from the 39 fair they found as they were digging things up. I figure Joey Vento, if he was with us, would be drooling over this stuff. Festival of Gas, a restaurant, and one of the General Foods arches over here. I always liked the fireworks. Besides, it was a great show that meant everybody was going to leave right after it, and I'd have more of the fair to myself. So here's a 1965 milk truck. Things have changed just a little. The Tower of the Four Winds back behind us, people visiting Pepsi. She does not look happy at all, and they're spending 50 cents to put her in a horse at Montana. So I guess, you know, there's probably all of us in our own family photo albums have pictures our parents made us do things we weren't so happy about either.
It almost looked like she was on a cell phone.
Yeah, it does. She's
That's the
holding the
saddle
horn.
horn,
Yeah,
obviously.
saddle horn, but yeah, it does look like she's texting.
Yeah.
Dear Mom, get me off this thing.
Actually, the horse doesn't look happy either. That eye being closed like that kind of makes it look like he's like, oh, not another one.
Yeah, imagine, you know, that they went around and around and around and around. It was probably not the greatest thrill for them. Mormon Pavilion. We're riding on the Skyway. Peeking inside the Port Authority, the restaurant up here. I can never afford to eat there during the fair, so I can only dream of what it must have been like looking out. The rocket thrower, UAR, the United Arab Republic, right before the fair, I think it was Yemen was the other country was supposed to participate. They got in a war, not a real war, but a battle of the wills with Egypt. So Egypt pretty much ended up being there by themselves. And the Egyptian symbol out here. He has been restored in recent years. I supplied them with a couple hundred pictures of the rocket thrower so they could figure out where he was gilded and the patina that was on it and everything. So he is about 10 years ago now. They did a very nice job of restoring him, and he's still in the park. Travelers Insurance.
Another one of the sheet.
What's that?
Well, that particular description for Africa really keeps coming up.
Yeah, because again, this is 013A, where 013 was the picture, and here's the back of it. So they're kind of all over the place. Again, Avenue of Commerce, we're in 1965, and we're getting near the end of the fair. Over in this particular one, you can see the Churchill Pavilion over here. But they changed these flowers out during the fair, so it would have been cheaper for them, particularly they're running out of money, just to put sod over the whole thing. But if you look at the picture in early in the year, they'll have tulips blooming and that sort of thing, and then later in the years, they're going to mums and other things that are more of a fall type planting. The Chrysler Rocket, this shows us was the 1964 colors, which were primarily white for the Chrysler Pavilion. They came back and painted a very, very gaudy set of colors for 65. I much prefer the 64 paint scheme. Different angle on General Motors somebody got, looking up on the bottom of it, going up the facade. And Indonesia, again, they did all this stonework and everything over in Indonesia, brought it here, had local craftspeople put it together. At the end of this fair, again, it sat empty for 65 because of a political dispute, but they kept their contract. They sent the people back over, took the pavilion apart, shipped it to Indonesia, supposedly to be rebuilt, but I've never been able to find out if it actually was put in Indonesia. So if anybody does have any information, I don't know, but they did fulfill their financial obligations to the fair and completely removed it and restored the site as they were supposed to. Imagine if you were a concrete salesman in 1963, huh? You'd probably make a fortune. Again, some of these are just in sequences that are very close. These seem to be getting repeated here. I don't know why that's happening. So I'm just going through these real quick. Yeah, we've seen her.
Mhm.
Actually, it's going in reverse right now, Bill.
Yeah, it is.
They are, huh? Let me try going the other way and see if I just. Okay, I don't know how that happened. My mouse button
That's
is
weird.
reverse direction here. Long Island Railroad, private car, they had the end of a touring car, this sort of thing the politicians would stand out and give speeches on whistle stop tours. They also had the front of a diesel train. Both these went to a park on Long Island. When the park closed down, the daycare place, they tried to move them out to the Oyster Bay Railroad Museum. This car turned out to be so rotted away that they were not able to save it. But this was the end of a real rail car they had sliced off for the fair. Yeah, we're going to be outside of Missouri at this particular point. There's our Mercury capsule again, Greyhound bus stop down below. Twilight comes to the fair. Windsock and the little control tower for the airport up here for the heliport. Inside China. And there's the Nina, or the Santa Maria rather, over in the lake. Over here, if we look real close, over here is the Sinclair gas station, which was supposed to be the gas station of the future, with pumps that would swing out to meet you. So if you weren't a great parker, they could still get to you. And it shows up in a bunch of Sinclair magazines, but that was the only one like it they ever built. Again, you mentioned the drought, Wayne. Here's a good example of 1965. This particular shot of how they just had to let some of the areas of the fair just go brown. There just wasn't the water to keep them green anymore. We're over at Florida, palm trees. Very first time I'd ever seen a palm tree. She is showing off her hat. She's at the base of the money tree, but the hats with the giant feathers in it were a very big thing for people.
I guess that was her purse. It looked like a vacuum cleaner.
I know. Looking at that, look at the size of that thing. I was thinking of mentioning it, and I said, "My God, can you imagine hauling that around all day long?"
Hoover designer purse.
Yeah.
I was also thinking it would make a hell of a battering ram if you needed it. Every now and then the LAPD, we keep the battering ram at the station, and every now and then you'll get a call that they need it. And if I'm nearby, I'll go pick it up and drop it off at the scene. And that damn thing's heavier than hell. And I'm just looking at the purse, but it had two handles on either side. I would think that was the battering ram. Boy, there's a lot of highway pictures somebody was fond of. Again, Indonesia, all these were brought over from Indonesia. They were all modern recreations of ancient art. They didn't bring any of the real ones over here, but they spared no expense on their pavilion. And we all know what that is. Putting the name on the Port Authority. Looking down from the Skyway. It's interesting, the Tower of Light. I mean, we did the show last week. I still can't believe they did an hour-long special and they didn't show you 1/30th of a second of the inside of what the Tower of Light was. Oh, just
I have
weird.
not seen a single interior shot from the Tower of Light ever.
Oh, I can fix that. I've got a bunch of them.
Oh, I'll go look at your site then.
Yeah, go look on the website. There's at least one or two there, but they had a great show where Ready Kilowatt was discussing electric power, And then a light bulb shaped to be Benjamin Franklin would take you through the discovery of electricity. And a friend of mine actually owns the same guy that's got the star from the actual fountain has the one of the puppets, the George Washington, the Ben Franklin puppet. He wrote to the electric power company and said, when you take down the pavilion, can I get anything? And he got this thing about come to our office, and there was this big ass crate, and they just gave him one of the puppets. It's really
Oh,
again. This is the entrance to the UAR pavilion, the Egyptian symbol outside. Again, I just got a kick out of all the little details of all the stained glass that somebody put together, and you just wonder where it all went off the fair. I just hope in some building today, people are looking at that and saying, I wonder where it came from, as opposed to you hope it wasn't just, trashed. This was interesting. This guy was wrestling an alligator over at the Florida Pavilion. Years and years ago, a friend of mine was working in, I've mentioned before, Bill Troop was working in Miami, and I went over to visit, and we took a trip out to the Everglades, and there was a guy wrestling alligators there. And I said something to him about having seen it at the World's Fair. He was very, very proud that was him. He had still been out wrestling alligators 40-something years later. And I remember saying something, you ever gotten bit? And he said, not yet. Well, about a month later, my buddy in Florida sends me the newspaper clipping. The guy had just gotten bit. But, you talk about longevity in a job. Imagine every day going and wrestling alligators for 40 years. You think you worked hard to get a pension, right?
Plus, that's an awfully small alligator.
This particular one is kind of small, yeah. But I tell you, I wouldn't want to do it. I
No,
don't
I
care.
wouldn't either, but
Yeah, because you got to worry about the teeth end. You got to worry about the claws, and you got to worry about the tail. I mean, the entire thing is just like something designed to hurt you. So the one that we saw him doing in Florida was when we saw him at the Everglades was a pretty good size one. It was probably about 6 feet, and he just went out and he didn't care. Said I've been doing it forever. Know what I'm doing, and then he got bit.
yeah, I think there's a picture from the 39 fair of someone wrestling like about a 6-foot alligator.
Yeah, better than me.
Yeah.
General Motors, General Electric, rather, one of those huge hits of the fair. So the line going all the way down and back where they built in this area the covered waiting area. But Disney really had a hit on their hands with this particular show. And just again, everybody lining up for it. What a job. Straining mud. Looking over towards China. Boy, it feels really weird doing the mouse backwards. I'm gonna have to see what software glitched on that. And over to the first of the Florida pavilions, it was here for 64, and then they added on the water ski show later on. But you could come here into the giant orange, and they gave out free samples of Florida orange juice. And I remember that being a really good perk. And 10, 12 people in front of you in the line, you stood in line, got your orange juice, went to another window, got another orange juice. It was a great way when you're on a budget to get something to drink. Inside the Ford Pavilion, the dinosaurs, the woolly mammoth is trapped in a tar pit, and these guys are just doing him in. I have a sudden desire to blow something up today. I'll flip through a few more of these. Wonder what this sign says. Let's see if it shows up. Probably says no parking.
Bill, I prefer to think that they were telling the woolly mammoth, here, grab the tip of my spear, I'll pull you out.
Yeah, Yeah. in today's world, that would be what you'd have to tell people, right? Mentioned the turbine car before at Chrysler. They had up on the stage where they puppets would explain to you all the values and virtues of turbine engines. They also had them running around on a special test track outside. Hong Kong, one of the most disappointing pavilions at the fair. Nothing inside but shops. And mentioned before about the photo contests. If we zoom in here a bit, you can see again, they had all sorts of displays in here. And so they would, do the photo club of upstate New York would get a week there. And again, it was a great idea. The thought of everybody, if you had a picture on display there, it was great bragging rights. Maybe to go see it, but it was also great for Kodak, because think how much film they sold as everybody was taking all the pictures to enter in all these contests. Boy, so many construction ones. Fountain of the lunar, the solar fountain with the main jet turned off. The flamingos from Florida, they got to spend the winter at the Bronx Zoo. I always wondered if you took these flamingos and you put them with the Bronx Zoo flamingos, did you get the same flamingos back? I guess they probably had a band on them. They could probably tell which theirs are, if you give them 40 flamingos, do you really care if you get a different 40 back or not? I don't know. Protestant, Orthodox, different denominations had exhibits telling you why the Baptists were different from the Lutherans, were different from the Methodists.
No, flamingos, Bill, they just put them in group 1 or group 2 and they say, everybody in group 1, come back to the Bronx Zoo.
If flamingos are that smart, that'd be fine. Kokomo, if you look him up, there was actually a popular chimpanzee act, Kokomo, and then as he got older, they brought Kokomo Jr. into the act. There's a sign down here. I don't know if it shows up too well in this one, but you were invited to come in. Yeah, this doesn't show too well. You can win a free trip to the to Egypt after the fair. Again, it's one of those things you wonder, did anybody actually win, or how would you know if somebody won or not? But it was, you could go inside and put your free entry in. I don't know which pavilion this is or which religious sculpture this is. Someday with Google reverse image, I got to go through some of these unknown ones. It does an amazing job of identifying some of the things. I love this one. I mean, the water in the fountain is absolutely still, and look how mirrored. It's almost like you did a Photoshop flipping and mirroring it. But that's what the fair was so neat at night. It was just lit up and it was total eye candy. I just really, I had a great time. You could also see how few the crowds are, just a few heads here, a few here. So again, nighttime, I'd stay as late as I possibly could, knowing though, if I missed my last train, I would never ever have any reason to go home again because I'd be dead. So, I've joked before, said earlier about being a concrete salesman. I think being the scaffolding salesman in New York would have been a great job too. Helicopter made a trip to the North or South Pole. I think South Pole. Anyway, was there on display. This is one I just recently did put online, and people were trying to figure out where it was. The General Food Arch here. We'd be right in the corner of the fair near where Kodak is located. So people were pointing out, and I hadn't thought about it till they mentioned it, that all the other arches were basically over roadways and you could walk through and everything. This is in the middle of a little traffic circle where the Greyhound buses would come by. Here's the Greyhound stop over here, but this is taken from the edge of the Kodak Pavilion. And all those other highways that we've seen being built in the other pictures, here they all are. They're the Long Island Expressway and everything else.
Bill, could the public walk from this under the highway, I would assume then to the amusement zone?
Yeah, well, let's see, I'm looking at the map right here. Yeah, I guess there's a walk, there's a bus, there's a road that goes there. So it looks like I'm looking at the map. And it looks like if you took this road and walk, you could walk around here and continue around underneath and you would come over to the Hawaii area of the Lake Amusement Zone. Yes.
Could
Yes,
it
that's
just be-
true.
I'm sorry.
Definitely sidewalks there.
It seems odd to have a information arch in that location because not a lot of foot traffic.
Yeah, and what's also interesting is if you go and you follow these, they did put luminaires. I think one of them actually shows up here. If I look at it here. There's just the edge of, that's a sign on the road. They actually have the luminaires going down around the particular one. You can see one here. So they actually extended them around on that road all the way down there. So I guess it was an area, and here's some people taking the hike. So, but again, it's just the fun things you pick up, you know, General Foods Arch 5. Why that one of all the ones is in an area by itself, who knows? And here, Vibra. It's again one of these booths these things you stood on, dropped your quarter in, and buzz and buzz and buzz and buzz and buzz. This is at the very edge of one of the brass rails, and you can see here off to the backside you could buy cigarettes, candy, cold drinks, telephone. They even had fire extinguishers and stuff, but there's one of the Vibra things for your feet. Mexico Pavilion, kind of piercing eyes. Polynesia, this ended up in Lake George at the Great Escape amusement park, and told that it has been taken down and is lying in storage, but is still there, not on public display anymore. Armory Sphere outside the New York City Pavilion that some guys came in and cut it off and rolled it off and put it on a truck and drove off. And they've got, I think, 6 of these animals back they found in somebody's apartment and were able to get back, but the rest of it never showed up again. I mean, I cannot imagine being, you know, ballsy enough that I drive a truck up with, you know, sawzalls and roll this into a truck, but they did.
Did the truck have Joey's name on it?
Yeah, it did say Vento Enterprises. That's a good one. Panels they put up here in some shots we saw earlier, they were up. Other days they'd have to lower them down for wind. But the whole idea was to black out the A&P Jane Parker sign behind it. Statue that was Bacchus and Fawn, I think it's called, was put on display here.
That's not there anymore, is it?
No, it went back to the museum.
Ah.
It was on loan for the fair.
I think I was familiar with it.
Kodak moon roof. The Masonic Center. China. Just a cute little visit. Guys out at the park, you know, at the fair, there's everything at the fair to take pictures of, but might as well get pictures of your kid because they're only going to be that size once. Sermons from Science, a perpetual exhibitor at World's Fairs, with a lot of the same exhibits that they would, take from the '62 Seattle Fair, take it off to the '64 Fair, show up with it at Expo '67. So they had it all down pat. Inside of Thailand, they had some exhibits of, here's one of the royal yachts, and you can see all the barge maybe, but all the oarsmen and everything. And it looks like to me she's on the wrong side of the rope.
I was gonna say that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's always one, right? Enjoying the carousel.
Looking at that art just in that Taiwan picture, in that earlier shot you had of a mannequin with some jewelry on it.
Yeah.
I wonder if that might have been Taiwanese.
No, I think this one. Well, let's see how far.
It was way back. It was way back.
Oh, the one I was saying. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. That one. Yeah, that could well be. Yeah.
Yeah, just a thought.
I'll have to give it a try. Sometimes I always try to meticulously sort slides when I buy them, and scan them in order 1, 2, number 3, number 4. And sometimes you're able to say, okay, I knew where number 1 was, and I knew where number 2 was. I don't know number 3, but I know number 4, and you can take the map and kind of go around and say, oh, this is in between. Other times there's just no. It was like the person was going helter skelter. Picture 1 was at the Ford Pavilion. Picture 2 is at General Motors, so we're in the transportation area. Great. Picture 3 was Berlin. Picture 4 is Chrysler. And you go, how did you do this? Did you just, run back and forth, or did somebody drop them and mount them wrong or whatever?
In the past, I found that some of the lesser photo labs, not Kodak, would mix up the order of slides.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, some of them. I also got back like one box for every slide in it was number 7. So the little machine that stamped them all was stuck and was stamping them all as number 7. So
That carousel horse was beautiful. Do you know who made that carousel?
no, I don't offhand.
I'll have to track it down. It looks like a fire. I can't tell if it's wood or fiberglass, but the horse is gorgeous. So
Yeah, you think a lot of work went into those things.
Was that the same kid that was posing in front of the tree?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Quite a crowd gathering around. The fair's getting pretty busy. They're just starting to come out here and do the show at Mexico. What's interesting though is if you look, cars driving through the site, it's just amazing that today in a theme park you would never ever do this sort of thing, but they would take a VIP and just put them in a car and drive them around, or the heads of the certain pavilions would want to go to lunch and they would just drive from one pavilion to another, park it and go in. So it's just craziness, stuff that they did back then. Seven Up, you don't see them anywhere as much as they used to. Here's your horse again, Don.
yeah, I'm just looking. Yep.
Yeah, so this is the carousel over at Carousel Park, which is now the carousel that's in the Queens Zoo. So it'd be interesting to know if they still have the same horses on it or not.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up a little history. So I don't know who made it yet, but I do know that it was at Coney Island for 62 years before it came there and then on to the zoo. So
Yeah, it's funny that the memories you have of things. I may mention this in another talk. My grandfather, one day, we went into Coney Island and they had taken a lot of these street cars, the trolley cars, off of the streets, and they were piled up inside this giant building waiting to be sold. They were going to, I think, Rio de Janeiro or someplace. And in the center of this building was this giant carousel. And we were fooling around on it. The guy said, do you want to ride? And he started up. So my brother and I got to ride on it. And it was, that's the carousel that ended up going to Carousel Park. So I think I was like 6 years old or something. I felt so cool to be the only kid, me and my brother Jim, on the carousel.
Most of those carousels at the time were built by the Philadelphia Toboggan Company.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, just that the horse is so elaborate, it might be an earlier one, and that's what I'm trying to find out.
I think they actually built the Carousel Park one from a combination of two carousels, putting it together. So the Oregon Timber Carnival, you can see all the things that were here. We could do rolling, axe throwing. Today there's a place in the town next to us. They have a bar where you can go axe throwing. And we always say, to me, that seems like a really bad combination, alcohol and sharp objects. But I guess that's a big thing these days. People like to go to this place and throw axes. So
Look at the picture at the bottom of it. That's the guy standing on, he's using his hands there, but he's standing at the top of the pole upside down. So
yeah,
it's part of the show.
handstand on top of a 110-foot pole.
Yeah.
So
One time I was on a Las Vegas layover, and they were having like the world dart throwing championships in the hotel we were at. I mean, they were all drunk, and
Huh.
to get from like the casino to I think the front desk, you had to walk through this hall, and it was like, am I going to make it through here alive? I mean, there's just darts flying all over the place.
that'd be scary. Paul Bunyan, by the way, lives up in Lake George, New York now, so he is still with us. We know what that is. We'll go
You
maybe.
said all this was only 300 slides? Seems
What?
like more than that. All this was only 300 slides?
No, I don't think we've gotten halfway through them.
Really? Seems like a lot more than 300.
Yeah, no, it's not. So for anybody that's in Florida today, I wonder how, let's see. I did not know the state bird was the mockingbird. Well, how about that? So. Manufacturing employment in
Mines?
the last 10 years.
Florida has mines?
Florida has what?
Mines.
Oh, yeah, I guess, bauxite or something. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder, they gotta be open pit mines or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a very high above sea level state. You'd think you'd have swimming pools very quickly.
Yeah. Again, here you can start dating something, the beginning of the fair. This would have said Dick Button's ice skating extravaganza. They covered it over when the show closed down, and then they later just copied a panorama of New York City and ended up putting that over here too. I've got the whole thing on my website about how they changed the lights. They got kicked off, broken off, put signs up, fences up, Boy Scouts there, anything to just try to protect them. Amphibicar going for a ride out there in the lake. There's one of the entrance pylons over here. It's something I've never done because I didn't have the budget for it. Anybody here ever been in an Amphibicar?
Nope.
I understand they were both lousy boats and bad cars, but to me, it just seems like it'd be real fun. I know they have them down at Disney World. You can go do it these days. So on one of my future trips, I got to give that a try.
Is it actually on Disney property, or is it?
Yeah, it, one of the Disney Springs or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I've passed a few times. It's in Disney Springs. They run 2 or 3 of them.
Oh, getting hungry. It's getting lunchtime out here in California, and got a sudden desire to go get my 99-cent meal.
Good luck.
Yeah, right. Yeah. This has been relocated to a Masonic facility and shows up on Google Maps. I forget exactly where it is, but if you go and look at it, it does show up in the back of one of their buildings. So again, nice to know certain pieces of things survived. Sadly, the monorail did not survive. It did for a number of years, but has since been scrapped. Ireland. This is inside the Spain Pavilion. It's a cross done by Salvador Dali. This sculpture is still in the fairgrounds. It's supposed to, and I think you can see the name of it here. Oh, no, it's just the name of the sculpture. It's still there in the fairgrounds. This rotated during the fair, but then the motor wore out. I remember going back to the fairgrounds in the 80s or maybe the 90s, and you just hear it going as it to move. So I walked over to it, and it was too high to reach up. I thought maybe I could go over and give it a push to get it started again. On a later visit, the motor wasn't making any noise. It just totally gave up. So you know, don't know if the motor's even still in it or not. Hollywood, The King and I. Entrance to the UAR. The free orange juice stands in the back. Walters International Wax Museum, Hope Hall. Underneath the US Pavilion. I think maybe we'll end with this one here. Just a nice general view, people out enjoying their day and having a good time at the fair. So hope people saw the what you call it, some things that were different or new, or at least just enjoying the trip back in time. Let me just go through the chat here.
A lot today.
Wisconsin Slide is now at Colorado Springs at the Santa's Workshop Kiddie Park. Great, good to know where it is. Cut lines. Okay, is that what they're called in the back of the pictures? Cut lines. Okay. Jim Brand mentioned that walkway did go through to the lake amusement area. And I knew he mentions people would sneak into the fair. I understood that people would do that they get to the edge of the highway and they would drop themselves down into the fairground. But it always seemed awfully dangerous to me. And, you know, for the, well, I guess I was lucky. I was able to go for free a lot with a friend, but you know, the thought of dropping into the fairground and going home with a broken ankle would scare me. Kathy, did I do a Zoom on merchandise from the fair? No, I've never done one specifically focused on that. That's something I may look at. I've got so many pictures of souvenir stands and you know, people carrying things around. The trouble is, you know, looking through all the pictures and finding them. But that might be something I could do about, or we could just show all our houses. We're all probably all full of merchandise.
You did do the one show thing where we did show and tell from things we have
Right.
merchandising that. Yeah.
Yeah, we might do that again. This past week, I've been I got two large collections of photos from the 34 Chicago Fair, and I've just been having a ball going through those. And you know, there's some parts you see over and over. You know, just like you always see the Unisphere from the New York State Pavilion. Well, you always see the Avenue of Flags at the Chicago World's Fair. But this one particular one went out to their kiddie amusement area and got all these really great shots of you know, the different attractions out there. And it's always fun when you come up with something new and different from a you know, from the same old. So that's it for today. Oh, Kathy, do you still have your event going on for Halloween coming up?
Yeah, she does. Yeah. Are you going to come?
Kathy, you're muted.
I have to get more details about it, but I'm gonna try to see about making it down there. So, and Tom, you weren't on at the beginning of it. I wasn't on your Thursday Zoom if you did it because poor Carol had a minor stroke. So Thursday I was at the hospital with her. So I'm not ignoring you guys, but I was kind of preempted.
Yeah, no, Carrie and I were at the Utah-Florida football game, so
Oh, okay.
we missed it too.
Great. Brock, you have your hand up?
Yeah, just a couple of quick comments. One, was this all from the same photographer?
Oh,
Or
no.
was this
No.
okay? Well, because some of the shots were very well presented as far, I mean, how he set the shot and everything else. I mean, did a really, really good job. It looked very professional, very dramatic scenes and stuff like that. Some of them were just looked like normal tourist type shots, but some of them were pretty well done. And I was just making comment on that. And one of their final comment was, the Bison truck. I remember from that time frame, they also, I believe it was General Motors, had another like a truck for like an 18-wheeler version of that, which wasn't as pointed, it was more open. But I remember them showing how the cab, you would drive it with these wheels that had a little knob on them that you just kind of turned, like this to make your turns rather than a steering wheel per se. And they were showing it on the highway. This is coming in the future. And for some reason, in the back of my mind, I want to say they were one of the sponsors on the Bonanza show, and that's where I saw it advertised for a few weeks and stuff like that. But I remember them talking about the whole idea. They thought these were going to be the new fleet of the future, and then nothing ever happened.
Yeah, I think on the Bison, one of the things they have it where there's two wheels again, and you drive it like, I guess it's really good if you want to have the back end go one way and the front end go another for a truck. That's probably really smart. But I would find it really hard to be driving along. And these days, just trying to keep people to keep their hand on the thing. Now thinking you got to drive with two hands. I mean, how would you hold your phone, right?
And
Exactly.
No, the pictures are a whole source of different places, like the square ones of the flamenco dancers and the water ski show and some of the others. I bought those. That was a professional photographer that was taking them for, I think it was Life or Look magazine, one of the two. And I got somebody came up with his collection, and I bought them, and I really had the fingers crossed I was able to get it. And it's quite a very nice collection of photos that they did. And then others are just, again, general. There's Instamatic films in there. There's, all sorts of different ones. So what I do is I scan them. I have a scanner, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 scanners within arm's length. I just scan them in bulk, and then I periodically go back and say, okay, I've seen 1 million pictures of the Unisphere from the New York State Pavilion. I don't need to scan that, but picture 17 in the batch is the Bison. Let me go scan that or restore that. So I'll have all the raw TIFF files that are waiting to be done, and sometimes I go back. But I started realizing, oh my God, I scanned this one in 2007. So I got so many pictures that ever go back, and then look at my closet, it's just full of ones waiting to be scanned. So
yeah, well, like one point was that shot of the Mercury capsule with the New York Pavilion in the background of the towers, just the way it was shot. Most people would have just shot the Mercury capsule, but he took time to look at it and did this very dramatic view. And there were some other places that you could tell he really thought about where he was shooting, and he took into attention the foreground, what it would do to frame the picture, and all that sort of stuff. So somebody who was taking time to take some dramatic pictures, whether it was professional or not, versus some of them were obviously just normal tourist pictures, like you said. Yeah.
I have all sorts of shots of Johnny eating an ice cream or something. Those generally go into my or them later pile. Tom, you had your hand up?
I just show and tell kind of. But remember, in one of these, we were talking about the Optimist, and I didn't know if y'all knew that they made this book for the Tomorrowland. Remember where they go back to the fair? Have all of you heard of this before?
No, I haven't seen it.
Surprised to find it. It's on eBay for like $4, I think. And it's part of the setup for the new Tomorrowland movie that they made with all the other stuff. Remember they did a record and a bunch of things. They had meetings and all. And then next Saturday I have to miss because we actually are doing a fair. So I'm in a board member of our local community council, and so I thought you guys would get a kick out of that. We made these two guys.
Oh, Humphrey and Jay Audubon.
Yep.
Oh, that's great.
So make name tags for them because I'm guessing most of the people won't know who the heck they are.
What fair is it you're
Tom,
talking about?
you may appreciate it. As soon as I saw them, I thought it was In the Bag, bump, bump, pick them
Yep.
up.
Yep.
The song going through my head.
That's one of my all-time favorite cartoons. I just love it. And when, Humphrey decides, oh, I'll just burn all the trash, remember? And then Smokey the Bear comes in.
For the folks that don't know it, Jay Audubon was a character they came up with, the ranger there. And the people have come to his park, Jellystone or whatever national park, made a huge mess out of it. And he decides he's got to stick with the pin on it. And he's picking up trash, and he realizes he can trick the bears into doing it. So
Because he's the boss.
right. So he does this whole song, and stick it out in the bag, bump, bump, and all the bears are bumping their butts and they're all going. And then they look over, and he's just lying there singing the song. He's not
In his hammock.
Yeah, it's a great cartoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did a number of those cartoons. The same guy that did the voice of Jay Audubon was the guy that did Mr. Smee and other
Right.
voices. And just great fun. Those are great.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what we're doing is we're selling trees for $5, the giant trees in a little tube. And so I just thought they'd be draw the kids in and make it more fun.
Well, we had a big storm here a week ago. Hurricane came up, and I was actually up in Seattle with Carol, and we were visiting Margot up there. And I came home early because you mentioned little trees. Carol went to the LA County Fair a number of years ago and got a test tube with a redwood in it.
That's what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've now got a 40-foot redwood tree in our front yard.
Yep.
And I was really, really worried what they were predicting, whether or not I would still have a 40-foot tree in my front yard or I'd have one lying in the house.
Ooh.
And we are very, very lucky. Just the way the winds hit, my friend that's 2 miles south of me, all sorts of branches broke off their tree, came down in her backyard, all over and you drive around that neighborhood, that got really hit hard. Here we hardly had any wind, so just 2 mile difference made. But yeah, I was really worried about Carol. I mean, we love her tree. I go out all the time. I keep joking that I'm waiting to get big enough I could put a tunnel through it and drive through it. But
Yeah.
Don't you have a little stream in the park across the street? Did it flood? Did it flood?
It flooded on this last one again. And it's dried up again. Everything came down so hard, like 6 inches of rain in 4 hours. So the thing was going like crazy, and now it's all down again. But it ran the latest this year that I've ever seen it run because we got so much rain during the winter. But yeah, I've taken my drone just to go and say, I think the tree is 40 foot tall. Let me think. I've flown the drone up, and it tells you the difference in altitude, and I think it's 41.5 feet. It's up there, and it, like I said, she brought it home like that. So
How many years ago did you plant it?
What's that?
How many years ago did you plant it?
Probably about 30.
30. So it grows over a foot a year.
Yeah, it's a number of years ago, the roots kind of messed up with one of the drainage pipes, and the guy was like, "We're gonna have to take the tree out." I said, "No, you're gonna have to reroute the drainage pipe. That tree is." So.
Yeah, they actually double in size every year, I believe.
Yeah.
So if you when you start with the tube, in a year you should expect to see it, about 1.5 feet tall, and then 3 feet, then 6 feet.
So next year, I'm gonna have an 80-foot tree?
Possibly. Maybe there's at some point where it's because when I say double, I mean double in bulk, right? So more branches, more, not height. Yeah. And early it's height, but later on it's just more branches.
We were actually getting a little worried about it with all the drought that we've had. And I've, because we would start seeing brown spots showing up on it, and I would go out at night and put a hose on it, let it run deep root water, the roots and everything. And then when the rain hit this year, boy, all of a sudden all the brown went away, and it looked really green. What was interesting was though, the day or the 2-3 days after the storm that came through here, we have a lot of the neighborhoods have pine trees of different types, and the pine needles, the wind came through and the rain came through, and we're ending up with 6 to 8 inches of pine needles out on the road. So the city actually had to come in with the trucks that were like snow plows to plow up all the pine needles, and this big scoop would throw them in the back of the truck and take them away. And I mean, because you think if you're coming down the road in a motorcycle and all of a sudden you've got an 8-inch thing of pine needles across the road, not good. But the whole area, Porter Ranch, the next town to us, the wind hit there pretty hard, and just the entire area was full of pine needles. Really weird. Wayne?
Yeah, how's your dog doing?
Oh, the dog's doing okay. We mentioned 2 weeks ago, the one dog got a very bad case of diarrhea, and we took her to the hospital, and they said, well, it's probably nothing. But I said, well, I don't want to say probably. I want to know for sure it's not nothing. So I paid the whole $518. It turned out to, X-rays and blood tests and everything. The trouble is, if you have 2 dogs, you don't end up with a sick dog. You end up with 2 sick dogs. So we brought the first dog in, and she was, oh, she's getting back up and she's doing okay. And the other dog says, oh, my turn. So we got them through that. I mean, the poor dog, I mean, thank God they're really good dogs and they bark. I need to go out. But it was every hour of the night I had to take her out because she needed to go. Well, we just get through the whole thing with 2 dogs with the diarrhea and all the rest of it. And then I take her out. I forget what day it was, Monday, Tuesdays. Anyway, we get down the street, we get 2 houses down, and she steps on a bee.
Oh, no.
Yeah, because as I was watching the one dog, and then I look over and Misty's standing there with her leg up in the air, and I look down, there's a bee going in circles and a death row on the sidewalk. So I was like, oh crap. So I picked up the dog and carried her home. It was on Monday. I carried her home, and Carol was on the phone with the vet getting the results from all the tests and everything. I said, hey, as long as we got you, what do I do about this bee thing? I said, give it Benadryl, and then if it gets bad, you have to do something. Gave her some Benadryl, and 4 hours later, she's hopping around, jumping up on the lap. But for a couple of days there, oh my God, the dogs are just. So that was the beginning of the week with the dog and the bee, and then Thursday was Carol. So just. Oh, it's always something.
So you had to put a diaper on the dog.
Oh, good luck. I mean, it would have overflowed out of the diaper. So, but no, they're both well trained, and they would bark, and I'd come downstairs, take them out back, and let them do what they needed to do. So, luckily, all went well. Yeah, Kathy, we did talk about Zorro merchandise on an earlier show, so maybe that's one you were thinking of. So. How many trees do we need to replace all the trees we use in our lives? Good luck with that. Yeah. Luckily, there's people like Tom that are keeping an eye on things and trying to suggest to people they stop using more than they consume, but crazy.
Speaking of trees, pine trees and whatever, we have a family cabin up near Yosemite, and what the name of the fire was, it's been several years, but it literally came within feet of our cabin, destroyed a couple cabins just up the hill, but a lot of trees were burned. So, my dad and me and my sister and my nieces, we got from the Forest Service a bunch of, the trees in the test tube things. And we planted them, probably about 100 at least. Not one took.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I don't know what we did wrong, but.
Well, evidently, I'm just taking a quick count here. I must have miscalculated how many pictures I had restored because 1 second here.
I guess 600.
Well, you're probably pretty close. We looked at 419 today, and there were, let's see, 29 left to go. So
we almost made it to the end.
Oh, damn, almost.
I'll just do them. Just do
What's
it.
that? I can go through them if you want to see the rest of them.
Then slap them up there, we might as well.
Okay, here, hang on 1 second.
Hey, Don, is that Lake Louise behind you?
Yes, that is. Good call. That is indeed Lake Louise. We were staying, that picture was taken literally just outside the door of our resort that we were staying in that day.
Was that the Fairmount there?
I'm sorry?
Is that the Fairmount Hotel over Lake Louise?
No, there's no fairground there. This is in the middle of the Rockies.
No, Fairmont Hotel.
Canadian.
Oh, Fairmont. Yes, it is indeed the Fairmont.
Yeah,
The
Fairmont,
package
Canadian
we
Province.
purchased from Rocky Mountaineer and our travel agent put us in Fairmont along the way with varying levels of results. So,
Okay, you should be able to now see we'll get into the last pictures. The 53rd anniversary of the Republic of China. Again, no mainland China at that particular point in time. But again, nice that you can date these. Good one for Wayne outside the RCA Pavilion. Astral Fountain.
they're running.
This was again, you try to go and date pictures. So I came up with this one. And this is the yellow Rolls Royce from the movie of the same name, the yellow Rolls Royce. And it was brought to the fair, put on display for a short period of time outside the Hollywood Pavilion. Big Ole and outside of Minnesota. So this dates it to 1965. And we have original crispy something. We don't know. I don't know what original crispy. I don't know what they were selling. So
Krispy Kreme donuts.
yeah, maybe, but that's done with a K. This was kind of one I did a lot of work on this particular one. I scanned this several times and put it together in what's called a high dynamic range photo, because I wanted to be able to get the details of the overhang of the United States Pavilion, but also wanted to be able to get everything in the back without blowing it out. So it was kind of fun how it all came together.
It's a great shot.
It really
Yeah,
is.
I liked it.
Do you know what all the spots are in the back of the sign there?
You always
No,
wondering that.
I tried, if you try zooming in on them, there's nothing that makes any
It's like
particular, sign or
patchwork.
anything.
They might have been, I think there's to hold the eagle in the front.
I was just gonna say, I think that's exactly what it is. I think these are the attachment points for the giant eagle that's on the other side of this. So why they didn't come over and make them nice or anything, but I think that's what they are.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, just all this sort of little details you can pick up in these things. I'm trying to figure out what the hell this thing is right here. So Dick Button Show, they out there doing, you can see from the empty audience why it didn't last that long, but it is interesting that you occasionally end up with pictures of something different. More of Dick Buttons. Looking up at the Scott Paper Tower. Thought that was kind of an interesting angle they got. New York State, one of the very frequent performances by local groups. The Lake Amusement Area Gate. Ah, that was a long day. I got my Argus camera. I'm going home, and I bet they're glad to be sitting down. The Westinghouse time capsule is not visible here, but hanging in between these. Down below here was an area, and they called it something like Go-Go USA or something at the beginning, and it ended up becoming the Dinkelhocker Beer Garden. Little telescope you can put your quarter in and see out around the grounds. More flamingos. And if we look in on this one, Hialeah is the home of the famed 500 flying flamingos. So my guess is they probably wanted to get their same flamingos back.
That's nice.
Well, the flamingos know who they are, and they say, "Hey, buddy, you're not from our group."
Yeah, they probably do. They'll probably peck you to death or something.
They would know.
Wonderful World of Scouting and exhibit telling you here today that the Bay Area Council in Texas, and I thought Bay Area sounds like San Francisco. No, it's the Galveston Bay. So the basically different troops would come in from different areas. They had a thing where they would put together troops from all around the country, or you could have a group come in from like we were Nassau County Council, you had Suffolk County Council, and they would put you in here. And then this was a uniform, the dark shirt, dark green was Explorer Scouts. So that's the age 14 and above. inside the US Pavilion. This is kind of interesting. This was the the same day the US Army band was there giving a concert. The US Army Rangers were doing a example display of rope work and mountaineering, and they were coming down, rappelling down the face of the pavilion. Wouldn't that be cool? Eat your heart out, Joey. And up in the Port Authority restaurant, looking out. Look at
Now,
all,
is that the restaurant? Aren't there two restaurants up there, or weren't there two? The one at the very top was the top of the very, just below it was like a circular.
this is the lower circular one. Yes,
Okay.
right.
Was it less expensive?
Yes.
Then they built one on the heliport later, didn't they?
Yep, they did another dining hall.
Yeah.
Bunch of escorters down below, so you can date it to 64. This was another interesting one. Tony Randall star of The Seven Faces of Dr. Lau. I've been able to narrow it down to which week he was there, but not what day he was there. But he was coming to do his bit with the hands in concrete bit. I put this on Facebook, and a guy said something about this guy was probably taking all those cups home so he could sell them on eBay. And again, just the funny little things you do. You look over and you can see that there was a Canada Dry soda machine. I can't think of ever having seen another Canada Dry sewing machine someplace. But you could also come over here. I had no idea that you could get Italian ices at the Hollywood Pavilion.
Did the woman in the center of the picture, Red, White, and Blue, is she carrying like a bowling ball? Look at that purse.
Oh,
Her, so she's carrying a typewriter.
hair
Those of
dryer.
us who know what they are.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, imagine carrying that all day.
Yeah.
What about this lady here? Not to be mean, the one with the white purse with the flower.
Right.
Just,
She
just
wearing
for,
a mask or
just for
something? Or
security.
she's wearing a gorilla mask.
How did security let them come through the gate with that?
Well, yeah, you wonder what people are, carrying in some of these. I don't think they checked anything going into the fair back then. You didn't have to. But you wonder with some of these things. I know people would come to the fair and perform for the day, and you wonder if that was like, her drum majorette uniform, and she's carrying it around for the rest of the day. Who knows what's in some of these?
See that 8 foot,
What?
see that 8 foot tall guy in the background, dead center? It's about 8 feet tall.
Oh, here, yeah, yeah.
No, to the right, to the right.
There it
Yeah,
is.
yeah, hope he's
Yeah,
carrying
go down.
something. Well, I wouldn't want to be
There he
behind
is.
him.
Look how tall he is.
Yeah,
He just towers over everybody.
Bill, didn't they keep a lookout for people trying to bring in materials to do protests?
at the very beginning they did for signs and, that sort of thing, but I don't know if that they went on with it much. I mean, a lot of families brought in their own food and stuff so they could have picnic lunches. So I don't remember ever being, my mother would pack a sandwich for us, and I don't remember anybody ever giving us a hard time about it. And this is the end. This was the Israel pavilion that was designed but never built. And instead we ended up with the American Israel. Well, that's it. All 400 and something of them. And maybe next week we'll do the newly restored Expo 67 photos. So, again, not that I keep busy with this stuff, but that's 400 something, 450 or so of just the 64 fair. And I've also been doing Expo 67, Disneyland, Disney World, and whatever. It's my version of taking my mind off reality. So,
I can't make it next week. I'm gonna be down at the beach.
oh, well, we'll just all skip next week then. So remember, next week we all sit here and we all talk about Urge, remember?
Yeah, that's it.
Unless I bring my camera down there, you see me sitting in my lounge chair in my bathing suit on the beach.
Hey, are you going to be at Myrtle Beach?
Myrtle Beach, North Myrtle Beach.
You will be too.
North Myrtle, I stay at the Avista Hotel.
Okay.
Know where the
We're
Avista
at
is.
Kingston Plantation.
I remember last year you said you were there the same week. So I look for you. So I walk up and down to the beach every day.
I might see you at dinner. Who knows?
Maybe. I know all the good
World.
restaurants.
Tom just made a great comment. We're seeing a lot of reasons why they had a hospital. The guy in the pole, the alligator repelling, axe throwing, water skiers. I imagine they probably gave out a hell of a lot of Band-Aids for blisters during the fair. You know, it'd be interesting what that statistic was.
I
So,
think a lot of the cases were like kids overeating.
yeah, and they also had heat stroke and, you know, all sorts of other odds and ends. Of all these Fair Corporation records, those are some of the very few that are still sealed and not available. If you go to the New York Public Library, you can ask for all sorts of things, but you cannot get the hospital reports, and you can also not get the police reports of you know, people that they picked up for shoplifting or all that stuff. So, you know, I guess, you know, your secret is still safe these days. So, like I said, just about everything else is fair game, but those are still they have them all, but they're restricted. So, well, we'll be back next week. I said probably more photos. I've got some more videos to do. It seems like there's always a never-ending supply of stuff.
Phil, just real quick, have you ever done Expo 86 on one of these?
Yes, did it
Okay.
a
I think I
while
must
back.
have missed it then. Okay.
Yeah, go back and look. At it. I absolutely loved Expo 86.
Oh, it was wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was, to me, it was just really great. And you know, to go back there today, you can still see the science globe and, you know, thing that they did. Most of it's gone, but you know, it's still, there's pieces of it you can still, you know, pick out. But yeah, no, I thought they did a great job. I mean, taking an absolutely desolate, you know, piece of the waterfront that nobody wanted to be anywhere near, and I thought it was, for a small size footprint and everything, I thought they did a really great job of it. And they some of the pavilions, like the Spirit Lodge and some of those things, were really you know, just shows way ahead of their time. And the other thing I've mentioned in other talks, one of the ways they make it successful was they had so many local groups come in, and they would invite, you know, the people from Saskatchewan to come in and do, you know, song or dance, and everybody came, and just the pride of everybody there that was there to see their kids and their uncles and their nephews and everything, you know. So you go there in different days. I felt it had a lot of energy. I mean,
Yeah.
I really thought the people there were not just there, but they were participants in it as opposed to just attendees.
Well, yeah, and also the provincial pavilions, what was really neat was all the people that worked in them were from that province. They weren't just
Yeah.
from Canada, they were from that province, and they could talk to you about what it was like to live there and everything else. And it was really kind of a fun thing, because that, you know, you could see the pride they had in where they lived and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So
Yeah, it was a great fair, and I have enough pictures. Maybe we'll go back to Expo 86 again. You know,
I've got a lot of slides I need to scan, but
yeah, you need to do it, because they'll sit in your closet deteriorating. Oh, a little bit just went away as we said that. Oh, a little bit more. So
I loved the Japan Pavilion at Expo 86 because you got to ride for a very short distance
the
a
train,
full-size maglev train.
yeah. Yeah, the HSST train. Yeah, it was really kind of neat. You got a boarding pass and everything. I still got my boarding pass souvenir ticket for it. So oh no, it was a great thing. And Vancouver's such a cool town anyway. I just I
Yeah.
up there.
I agree. I have all the cities I could lay over in, working for an airline for 43 years. Vancouver was always my favorite.
Yeah, no,
Beautiful city in a beautiful setting.
love it up
Start-
there. We were up there. Oh, the last time for any period of time of length was probably a good 15 years, maybe, oh God, maybe 20 years ago. But we went up for a week, stayed up there, and took train rides up the coastline, and you know, just went to the parks and wandered around. We had a really great time. I got to go back up.
We started our Canada trip in Vancouver. We spent a day there. Unfortunately, I was with a rather large group of friends, and I wanted to go find the World's Fair site, but that wasn't what they were interested in. So we didn't do that. But it's a gorgeous city.
The dome structure that they had science stuff on. It's a science museum now, and they do you know, immersive movies and that sort of stuff. So it's still there. And then a lot of the area's been built up into housing and that sort of thing, but there's still some of the walkways along the water, and you can still, start putting, there's enough mental connections. You can say, oh, that's where the Egyptian pavilion was, and you can even start remembering, oh, that's where McBarge was. I mean, there's enough thing you can start putting it together. So
Sorry about the background noise. Yeah, I thought I saw where it was, but I didn't get a chance to move over there. But yeah, we really enjoyed our time there, aside from the fact that there was all that smoke there that day.
yeah,
Yeah, but
it's an area called False Creek. So
mhm.
I always thought that was a great name.
Don, how recent was this trip that you took?
We were in Vancouver less than 2 weeks ago. It'll be 2 weeks ago
Oh,
tomorrow.
okay.
So when our train actually went through a forest fire, because they almost canceled our trip because the hotels have been closed.
Yeah, I always loved layovers in Vancouver, Calgary, and Edmonton. Canadian cities are just very different than US cities. It's just a very different vibe. And there's so much to do around it. Like Calgary, we had a long layover one time. We took the train up to Banff. In fact, it was on Easter Sunday, and
Oh, it's gorgeous there.
brunch there.
Mhm.
We also one time rented a car and drove up to Lake Louise and did some hiking and that kind of stuff.
It's absolutely beautiful. We left Vancouver. We spent the first 2 days driving or riding on the train. And that's not the most scenic part of the trip. Plus there was a forest fire. Aside from the fact that we suddenly were surrounded by firefighting helicopters that were grabbing water out of the river and flying off again. There wasn't a lot to see on that part, but once we got to the eastern half of the journey, it is, I mean, spectacular is just not the word for it. It's amazing what you can see up there. And something I noticed in Vancouver, by the way, for you former Disney guys, they're doing a virtual hang glider ride, and I swear from everything I saw, they're using the exact mechanism that Disney is using for Soarin'. It looked like a one-on-one copy. So I'm not sure if Disney licensed out the rights to that or something, but it's
No,
definitely the same thing.
I think they came to a very close but not exact copy.
I mean, just seeing the videos, they actually showed you a video of how it worked and such. Just seeing that, it's like, boy, it's good. I don't know how they're not getting sued by the mouse, but it's very close.
Where in the city is that?
I don't know where in Vancouver, because again, I didn't get to do it, but they have videos at every spot you go to advertising this, and they really push it hard. And
If I recall-
Soarin' Over Canada thing.
If I recall correctly, it's a bunch of ex-Imagineers that were involved in it. So I think they can figure out, don't cross that line.
That would explain it. I wanted to write it, but again, not what the group I was traveling with was after. So
Well, I wouldn't go with them again.
yeah, someday I'll take them to a theme park and I can control the agenda.
I'm gonna run off to lunch. For you folks that back east that have already had lunch, I'm sure you've enjoyed it. And for those folks of us on the West Coast,
Headed is
time to do it.
Lunch, we ran so late, it's almost dinner time.
What's that? Yeah.
Ran so late, it's almost dinner time.
Yeah.
I'll see you in 2 weeks. I'll see Beth on
See
the
you
beach.
in 2
next
weeks,
Saturday.
and we'll catch you later on. Thanks all for participating.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.
See you next Saturday, Beth.